Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Elizabeth Alley. I am the Assistant Director for Residential Education at St. Joseph's University, and I also happen to be one of the co-chairs of the PPD Committee for McCuho, our Personal and Professional Development Committee. Also on the call with me, if she wants very quickly to introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Gina Kiefer. I'm also a co-chair of the PPD committee, and I'm a resident director at Alvernia University.
Yeah, so Gina and I, as I mentioned, serve as the co-chairs for PPD. We are one of the committees in McCuho that really focuses on creating professional development opportunities for not only our entry-level staff, but our mid-level and our senior staff as well. So if you are interested in the work that we do, if today's presentation sparks some interest and you would like to become more involved, certainly just drop us a line in the chat box, say, hey, this is me, I'd love to learn more about your committee and what you do, because we would love to have you. One of our goals is to continue having webinars about every other month. So we're always looking for speakers, we're always looking for ideas for presenters, and things like that. So certainly just drop us a line in the chat box that you see on your screen. So with us today is actually one of the co-chairs of our REC committee, and he might speak a little bit about that. But we have First Lieutenant Johnny Kocher, who's on the phone with us, or is on the presentation. He was the, he presented this and won his program for Best 30-Minute Program at last year's McCuho, so we wanted to invite him to perform that again for us via this webinar. Johnny is an alumni of West Virginia University. He earned his master's in secondary education and his bachelor's in history and social studies. Johnny taught in the West Virginia public school system as a high school social studies teacher, and he returned to higher education in 2010 as a night staff manager for the WVU Residence Life Office. He joined the military in 2011 and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in 2011 as a field artillery officer in the U.S. Army. Johnny was then promoted to first lieutenant in the West Virginia National Guard in 2015, and he served on various disaster relief missions across the state of West Virginia. So he's certainly the guy to go to in crisis situations, so no wonder he's working in residence life and housing operations. He became a residence hall coordinator at WVU in 2013, and he currently serves as a residence life specialist at WVU, as well as the co-chair of McCuho's Recognition, Education, and Connections Committee. So without further ado, we're going to give it over to Johnny.
Well, hello, everyone. I really appreciate you coming out today and spending some time with me as I go through this brief presentation that I presented at the previous McCuho conference. The title of the presentation is Heroes on the Home Front, Supporting Student Veterans on Campus. I do have a slight preface that this presentation has continued to evolve over the last several years as I continue to learn better ways that we can support veterans on campus. This is a topic and a cause that's very near and dear to my heart, having served myself. And we'll go ahead and get started. If anyone has any questions throughout the presentation, I would ask that you direct them to the chat box, and my wonderful co-organizers will help me answer those as they come up. If they can wait till the end, I'll also have a period of question and answer at the end. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so I already had a very nice introduction by Liz there, and just a few things that I would add in there is just to reiterate my time here at West Virginia University in higher education, commissioned in 2011 as an officer by then President Barack Obama, and I currently serve as a first lieutenant in the 201st Field Artillery right here out of Morgantown, West Virginia. And little side note, it's the oldest continuing serving military unit in the entire country. All right, so why do I give this presentation? This is something I always want to start with because I think it's important that everyone understand why a certain person is talking on a certain subject. This is something I don't do, just because it's necessarily a topic that interests me or a topic that I feel like would be good professional development to learn more about, but it's a topic that has affected me personally. So a little bit of a story about how the idea of presenting these talks about veteran support on campus came about. It wasn't more than a couple years ago that myself, as a young second lieutenant in the National Guard, was watching the snow start to come down here in Morgantown, West Virginia, and it wasn't soon after that that it reached disaster levels, a massive snowstorm. I believe it was named, I believe it was Snowstorm Jonas is what they called it. And soon after that, I got the phone call. The governor has activated the National Guard. All Guard members need to report to their units to provide disaster relief to the people of West Virginia. So, you know, I packed my bags. I'm a residence hall coordinator at the time, so I send out some emails to get my shifts covered, things such as that. And I'm walking outside about 1 a.m. that night with my bag of gear to get me through the week or so. And I remember looking left and right out at the snow-covered kind of darkness outside, and I see another guy in military uniform walking to his vehicle with some bags. So I go up and talk to this guy, and I was like, so are you a National Guard member? Are you serving, you know, for this disaster relief? And he was. It was another student that had been living in the residence halls who I had no idea he was a military service member, but he had gotten the same phone call I had, that he was needed to provide disaster relief to the people in West Virginia. And over the course of the several missions I've had since then, it's been interesting for me to see how many soldiers we have on campus that drop everything at the moment's notice to go and serve their country, serve their state. This picture I have on the screen right now was the most recent disaster relief mission I was on. If anyone remembers the floods in West Virginia that were made national headlines. But, you know, from left to right here, we have a graduate student at one of our branch campuses at Potomac State, myself, an undergraduate student living in the residence halls, and a graduate student living off campus. So it's interesting to see that all these students, at the same time they're working on their classes, at the same time they're dealing with the normal stressors we see from students living in our residence halls and on campus, they're also made the commitment to serve the country and do what they can to make this a better place. So that's why I give this presentation, because having met all these wonderful people out there that have made this commitment, I've made it my commitment to make sure they're supported on campus. So what I'm going to try to do here today, I'm going to emphasize a little bit more why this topic is important for all of us today in higher education. I'm going to highlight some of the most common issues I've come across through research, talking to student veterans on campus, and express to you what these issues are that most commonly are faced by veterans on campus. And then at the very end, most importantly, I'm going to make sure that each and every one of you leave today with some basic knowledge that you're going to be able to use to support student veterans on campus if you find yourself in that position where one is coming to you for help. So those are my goals today, and I hope I'll be able to meet them in the next 20 minutes or so. All right, so as we get started here, some basic terminology to get us all on the same baseline. Student veterans. You're going to hear the word veteran thrown around a lot in this presentation, and you also might hear it thrown around a lot on your campus. But just so you know, the terminology for student veteran, that includes active duty service members, reservists, members of the Army Reserve, the National Guard, which is a separate entity from the Army Reserve, and veterans who have left or retired from service, completed their tour of active duty or reserve or National Guard, and are currently civilians. Another thing you're going to hear come up a lot in talking to veterans is the GI Bill. Now, you might hear in West Virginia, it's the Promise Scholarship a lot of students use. You know, FAFSA financial aid, Parent Plus loans are some items we hear a lot in the higher ed profession from students who are having financial aid issues. For student veterans, it's going to be the GI Bill every time. Enacted in 1944, this is a scholarship for all active duty veterans, Guard veterans, reservist veterans that allow them to pay for school. And the post 9/11 GI Bill that was enacted in 2001 after the terrorist attacks in which the nation geared up for several global conflicts, it also stretched from paying for school to a living allowance, money for books, and being able to transfer those benefits if you weren't going to use them to your spouse or child. So nothing you need to memorize, but something to be aware of when you might have some veterans with financial aid issues. A little bit more baseline knowledge before we get into the rest of the presentation. All right, so here's the different branches of the military. You're going to hear these thrown out a lot in talking to student veterans. You have the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard. One thing I'll direct your attention to is the Army right here, Army Reserve, and National Guard. National Guard being the one that I am a part of currently. So just some basic terminology here. The Army is active duty. You live on an Army post, you drill every day, and you respond to the nation's emergencies, conflicts. The Army Reserve. The Army Reserve is you're enlisted in the Army, you drill once a month usually, and you respond and deploy with the Army in times of need. The National Guard is one that you'll see more often on your campuses than the other two or even the other branches listed below. The National Guard are soldiers who have sworn in allegiance to the President of the United States as well as the governor of their state. So they drill once a month just like the Army Reserve, but they also respond to state emergencies, whether they be floods, snow emergencies, power outages, hurricanes, national disasters, or civil unrest. The National Guard can be called up by the governor for those items. So it's important to be aware of when talking to veterans what their branch is, to have that baseline knowledge. None of us are going to be experts on what it means to truly be in the Marine Corps, but you can know what that means as compared to being in the military, the Army, I should say. All right, let me get my pink writing off the screen there. There we go. So why is this important? Why is it important that we be aware of the student veteran population on campus? Well, if you follow the news at all, you see that the conflicts of the last decade that America has been involved in are drawing to a close. And with those conflicts drawing to a close, that GI Bill I talked about a few slides back is being used by more and more veterans every day. A few statistics on here. The number of veterans on campus rose from 2009 to 2013 by 500,000. The numbers continue to rise. And by 2020, over 5 million post-9/11 service members are expected to transition out of the military and to use those post-9/11 GI Bill benefits to attend school. So we have a continuing trend of a rise of student veterans on campus, and that population is going to rise considerably in the coming years leading up to 2020. So it is a population that is going to affect each and every one of us, and we're going to have to make sure that we're best equipped to support those student veterans as they arrive on our campuses and in our residence halls. All right, a little bit busy slide here. This is nothing you need to memorize because I have it loaded up on the handouts section of your little GoToMeeting taskbar you see there, so you can download this at your leisure, or if you would like me to email you a copy, I can do so at the end. But this is where a lot of the information comes from the Veteran Affairs Office. A few things we're going to talk about on the coming slides are the veteran makeup, the demographics right here, where we see that being a veteran is only part of it. You know, you have a plethora of different types of veterans, as well as the number of students the veterans make up on campus. Even though the number of veterans on campus continue to rise, there are always going to be a small percentages of the students on campus. And because of this, they're always going to have that tendency to feel alone and left out. And it's something we're going to talk a little bit about on the next slide. Okay, once again, get my pink writing off there. So going into the common issues, we've talked about why this is important. We've talked about the number of veterans on campus continuing to rise. So why do we need to be aware of this? What are some of the common issues that are facing this unique student population that we have? Highly diverse group, you saw that on the last slide. Come from a rainbow of colors, shapes, religion, sexual orientation, and political views. This is something we'll talk about a little later, but being a veteran is just the tip of the iceberg because you have the male, female, LGBTQ, different religions, sexual orientations, all shapes, sizes, and colors. It's something that when you talk to a student veteran and you're getting a student veteran help, you need to be aware that there's more below the surface than just the veteran tagline. Also to be aware that the veterans will not see themselves as victims. Veterans who have enlisted in the United States military, and this next slide says it best, they view themselves as a service member, someone who has signed up to lay down their life as necessary to defend this country. And there's a lot of pride that goes with being in the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, any of those other branches. But what comes along with that is the struggle of, I'm an American soldier. I was an American soldier. I'm a member of the National Guard, what have you. It is a sign of weakness to ask for help. This is something we see a lot in cases of mental illness on campuses, is that struggle to be able to ask someone for the help. And it's no more important anywhere else than with veteran soldiers on campus. One thing we need to be able to do is to normalize that process of getting help and make sure that it's known that there's no shame in seeking that help. You can let go of that pride, and even a soldier sometimes needs to ask for assistance. We'll get into some ways we can do that here towards the end of the presentation by getting these veterans involved with other veteran groups on campus where that process of seeking help is more normalized because others are doing it. This is what I talked about a little bit previously. They can feel very alone on campus. Typically, these veterans, for the most part, there are some exceptions with ROTC programs on campus, which are programs in which younger veterans are able to enter a program to become officers. They're normally 18, 19, normal undergrad, freshman, sophomore age groups. But the other veterans on campus are going to typically be older individuals. They're going to have more life experience than their freshman peers, and they're also going to see a lot of emotional immaturity among those they're with. And the next slide here kind of has a little bit of a funny, take on it, but this is how I've heard it described by a lot of people. Veterans on campus, they find themselves in this classroom with freshman students, someone who has been on the battlefields. They've been knee-deep in disaster relief in their state. Now they've moved on, they've done their time, they're wanting to use their GI Bill, whatever it is, to get an education, and they find themselves in a classroom of freshmen who have just graduated from high school, maybe never left home before. And you can imagine that feeling of isolation, that feeling of being alone, being different, that comes along with that. I think that slide sums it up best. Another thing that is a very common issue is the insensitivity in conversation. Something that comes up in classrooms, it's something that comes up in conversations with hall coordinators, hall directors, and veterans that are living in their residence halls. So it might, come up in conversation from other people, despite your political views, you view the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan as a blatant grab for oil, a political agenda that was a complete waste of human life. And you're sharing this political view with someone who has given up a portion of their life to serve the country. Not serve the country and fight in Afghanistan, not serve the country and make sure the United States has plenty of oil rights. Serve the country, period. Where they go is up to the president, but it is very insensitive to view yourself as the political expert on the nation's military conflicts, especially in conversations with student veterans. Another thing that goes along with it is, well, you volunteered to do this. You, in the end, signed on the dotted line, raised your right hand. You volunteered. So what is the issue here you're now, complaining about? Well, that's another thing. Everyone, has issues. Everyone has things they complain about. And yes, this service member did volunteer for whatever it may be, Army, Marines, National Guard. But that doesn't mean there isn't frustrations that come along with that. And that does not excuse ourselves from providing that support. It's one thing that I've heard multiple times, and it's kind of sad that you hear of people just saying, well, you volunteered for this, you know what you got yourself into, you're just going to have to see it through. Completely unacceptable. These soldiers are doing what they need to do to make sure that we can live the lives we live, that our institutions continue to grow and educate the people of this country. It's important that we understand that they volunteered so we don't have to, and that we can provide the best support now for them and serve them better. And we'll get to that at the very end as well. And I'm not even going to go into the last comment, but another thing that's completely unacceptable. You want to steer away from these kinds of conversations with student veterans unless they bring it up themselves as something they need to discuss. You know, a lot of times we'll be doing a program in hall, or there'll be a conversation come up in a classroom about the nation's wars, and it becomes known that there's a veteran in the classroom. Oh, hey, I'm sure you saw some things. You know, did you ever have to kill anyone? Did you see anyone that was killed? Did you lose anyone? Those are things that are completely out of line to ask a veteran face-to-face. That might be something they are not comfortable talking with, something they are not comfortable sharing with the rest of the group, and it's really out of line to bring those things up unless the veteran themselves feels like they need to talk about them, in which case they'll bring them up to you if they just need to vent a little bit. Otherwise, it's our obligation, if we see something like that occurring, to make sure that we know that those kind of questions should not be asked and catch the veteran off guard for things that they're not wanting to talk about. All right, I think this is the last thing on the common issues. Another thing that we talk about a little bit that I talked about when we started the common issues portion of this presentation was the mental health, the PTSD, and it's important to also be aware that the combat trauma that can occur from explosions, injuries on the job, this is going to be very different from the mental health aspect. Be aware that if you have student veterans, a lot of the things that come along with that we hear about a lot as common issues being issues with memory, attention, concentration, mental processing, all these things could be related to mental health and some kind of PTSD or something similar, or they could actually be signs of combat trauma in which they've had some type of injury that is making it difficult for them to pay attention in class, making it difficult for them to remember things and pay attention and things such as that. So it's important to note that with students that come see us in the residence halls, it's very often the tendency to direct them to our student wellness office, psychologists on campus, things such as that. It's good to keep in the back of our mind, even though none of us are experts and can make the diagnosis on spot, to be aware that it could be a mental health issue or it could be a bodily injury that's causing these issues with this veteran. It's never going to be wrong to point them in a certain direction, but it's going to be right of you to understand there could be some differences there with a traditional student talking to you about what could appear to be a mental health issue. All right, another thing that's become pretty prolific in the news today is with the Marines and the sexual harassment lawsuits that are pending due to some female service members and videos and photos being taken of them. So what I have here is that the military is not immune to discrimination. I will say that it doesn't happen frequently. It is a brotherhood that has a lot of people looking past skin color, sexual orientation, and looking to that uniform they wear. But we, by are no means immune to it. Female and LGBTQ veterans can suffer deeply issues relating to discrimination, sexual harassment, and sexual assault. And I have it underlined right here. If I could get my pen working right here, I'll underline it again. These student veterans almost always suffer in silence. It goes back to the political cartoon I had earlier in the presentation. Not only are they a service member, but they're a female service member, they're a service member of a different sexual orientation, and they view it as a sign of weakness and a sign of failure, not only as a soldier, but as a soldier that some people view as being more expected out of them. As a female service member, I can't come to someone with issues that I might be experiencing with harassment, sexual assault, because not only am I a soldier, but I'm a female soldier, and more is expected of me because there's a lot of doubters out there that I can perform the same combat abilities that a male soldier can. Same thing with soldiers of different sexual orientations. I'm a soldier. I'm also a gay soldier. If I were to come for someone with help because of discrimination I'm experiencing because of my sexual orientation, not only is it going to be viewed poorly because I'm a soldier asking for help, but I'm a gay soldier, more is expected of me. I have to prove myself that I can perform just as well as a soldier of any other orientation or gender identification can. I can add in there that I've served with female soldiers, with gay, lesbian soldiers, soldiers of every make and model. And I can tell you that, you know, it is something that for us in the military, it's viewed very poorly if one of our brothers or sisters is being discriminated against. So it's something that we need to be aware of, that if we have a female veteran, we have a gay, lesbian veteran, someone of a certain gender orientation veteran, that we be sensitive to the extra pressure that is on them if they're seeking help. And I got a quote on there from President Obama that I think serves it up best. You know, we veterans look out for one another, and it doesn't matter your skin color, your orientation. You know, you wear that flag just like I do, and we're going to look out for you. It's a really nice quote there. All right, let me clear my pen off the screen again. All right, so what can we do? Wrapping up this presentation, some things that we can do to equip ourselves to not only address the issues that I talked about, but the other number of issues that I didn't have time to go over today. We as student life professionals know that there is no extensive list of student issues, and just like that, there is no extensive list of student veteran issues. So what can you do to better equip yourself to take care of a student veteran that needs your support in your residence hall or on your campus? First off, understanding that many of the issues they may be coming to you with, they're outside of their control. It's one thing for a student to come to you and say, I need to miss a conduct hearing, I need to miss classes, I need to miss floor meetings, I need to miss programs, I'm not going to be around for a while. Okay, what do you have going on? Are you just going out of town? Or you just not feeling like attending your floor meetings? Are you just feeling like, you know, you're going to skip some class? Service members may have deployments. They may have been called up because of a state disaster like I talked about in the very beginning. These are situations in which they have no option. As someone who has sworn the oath to the president, to the governor, whatever it may be, they have no option and they must leave. And it is by law required that each and every one of us do what we can to accommodate those soldiers. So be aware that these things they may be asking for us in terms of leaves of absence or missing things in the residence halls on campus. They're outside of their control, and we are obligated to support them to make sure we can make it up for them. Do not make assumptions. Don't jump to, are you going to Iraq? Are you going to be on the front lines? Are you going to be, you know, seeing some combat? Don't jump to assumptions. It's going to be a stressful time for a soldier anyways. You don't need to be making assumptions about where they're going and what they're doing. Most of the time, they're not going to be able to talk to you about it anyways. Normalize the process of getting help. We talked about that on the previous slide. And know where to go to get help, underlined here at the bottom. This is what we're going to wrap things up with. So I'm going to be giving you a lot of phone numbers, a lot of websites, a lot of those kind of things. So you can ask me at the end, shoot me an email, I'll give you this presentation. You can jot them down. Most of them are located in the handout section of your GoToWebinar panel there. But I'm going to give you some resources to where you can point these student veterans in the right direction. So first off, your student veterans office on campus. I would say about 99% of your campuses will have one. This is a department that is devoted to helping out the veterans on campus, on your campus. So I have a little screenshot here of WVU's Student Veteran Office. I just had been clicking around on it and clicked on the deployment tab. Someone from your residence hall comes to you, or someone from your campus. I'm being deployed. I'm going to be gone for a year. I don't know who to talk to. I still want to go to school here. I just need to make sure that I can come back when I'm done with my deployment. Well, I have no clue where to point you at, but what you can do is know where you need to go. Right here under our deployment tab on the WVU Veterans webpage, all the information they're going to need to make sure they check all the boxes, as well as if you were actually on the website scrolling to the bottom with the phone numbers, the email addresses, and the campus location where this student veteran can go to. So you never want to go to straight, well, I have no clue. I'm sorry, I can't help you. You know at the very least that you're going to be able to point them to the veterans office on campus. So what if there isn't a veterans office on campus? We have some other things on here that will equip you to better support these students. If you take anything away from this presentation at all today, the most important thing is going to be right here on the screen now, the Veterans Crisis Line. That's something that's easy to remember. I want you to make sure that you have that in your mind as a resource. This is the one-stop shop for emotional support for student veterans on campus, off campus, in the residence halls, you name it. So that being said, I have the website here. I'm going to pull it over to the screen a second. Try to get my pen off here. So this is what the website looks like. 24/7 hotline for someone that needs to talk to someone about any type of veteran issue. Now, I know most schools will have their own hotline on campus for students with emotional issues needing emotional support. These are going to be veterans on the other side of the phone that are going to be able to be a little more relatable and a little bit more in tune with what issues those veterans are having. If someone is uncomfortable talking on the phone right now, there is a chat feature at the bottom, text message. There's all kinds of support material on here. So I would ask if you do one thing for me at the end of this presentation is you have this website bookmarked so that you can better support your veterans that might be going through some tough times by giving them this information. All right, let me get back to the presentation. There we go. Now below that, we also have the Department of Veteran Affairs. This is from the State Department in Washington. These websites here, and I believe I had that one up too. Maybe, I'm just drawing all over it, so I'll press on here. But that website right there is going to be a one-stop shop for veterans who have issues with their financial aid, their GI Bill that we talked about in the beginning that gives them access to their free education, their medical benefits, their appointment at Veteran Affairs hospitals that they can visit for free or little cost. Those are all going to be listed on these government websites here. So these are also good things to have bookmarked in your toolbox that you can point veterans to if they're having issues with their financial aid, with their medical benefits that goes beyond what your campus can provide. And it goes without saying that, again, none of us are going to be experts on veteran mental health or veteran medical benefits or veteran financial aid benefits. But we can know where to point them to talk to the experts on these issues. And that's the point of those websites right there. All right, a couple of my favorite things here are some support groups. These are some of the ones that I've picked out over the years that I've used to get myself through some tough times, as well as some of the people that I've served with. The Wounded Warrior Project is a great one. A lot of you might follow them on Facebook or see posts of the different activities they do across the country for veterans who have undergone wounds from combat or any kind of stress or something like that has affected their mental health. They organize all kinds of events across the country that these veterans can take part in free of charge to get part of a community, to get support among other veterans. Battle in Distress has become one of my absolute favorite support groups for student veterans. It is a website and a Facebook page that offers one-on-one go-to assistance if someone needs to talk about mental health issues, they're going through some tough times, or they just need another veteran to talk to. They're very responsive to their messages on Facebook, and they'll get back to someone right away through chat, through phone, if someone just needs to talk. Another benefit of both the Wounded Warrior Project and the Battle in Distress is they post events going on across the country that veterans can attend to get support, such as Veteran Affairs stand-down events where free medical care is given, where free mental health screenings are given, all kinds of benefits such as that. So it's good to have those in the back of your mind as well to, as I said earlier, normalize that process of getting help by providing them with these support groups. And then finally, campus veteran organizations. Most campuses have a student organization that is run by student veterans on campus. There's no better way for someone to normalize that process of campus life and of getting help than being in a student group of other veterans. And finally, the thing that I wanted to talk about was to be aware that each soldier, whether they're currently serving or not, they've retired or moved on, they're going to have their unit that they were part of. You heard me at the beginning, my unit being the 201st Field Artillery in Morgantown, West Virginia. That unit, as I said when I was talking a little bit about female soldiers, it's a brotherhood. They look out for one another. Each unit has a commander. Each unit has people that are looking out for soldiers' well-being, mental, physical, spiritual, financial aid. All that are embedded within the unit, people who are trying to help soldiers with those issues. So it's also important to note that all those soldiers that are trying to get help through you, whether it be your campus veteran office or somewhere else on campus, another option will also be that soldier's unit. That soldier's unit will always be willing to reach back out to them to make sure they get the support they need. It might not be something that you're readily available knowledge-wise. That soldier might not be comfortable letting you know what unit they were in, but it's something that would be the absolute most beneficial support network is those people they served with. I do have a little note there at the bottom. This is a fairly familiar terminology with us in student affairs and higher education. There is a confidential reporting policy in the military, just like if a student who was a harm to themselves would communicate that with us. If you were to communicate that to another veteran or someone in their military organization or unit, they would be obligated to report that up and seek out that veteran for help. There are chaplains that are a part of every military unit in the country, and these are individuals that are not just devoted to the spiritual health of the soldiers, but they're also the confidential reporter, where the soldier can talk to them without any worry about it getting spread to anyone else. So some good knowledge to be aware of there. So in conclusion, as I wrap up here with the presentation, I know we're going right on the half an hour mark here, I believe. To succeed, veterans need your understanding, compassion, and respect. It's our turn to serve those soldiers who have served us over the last decade or so or are currently serving. It's a quote that I like to end all my presentations with about student veterans on campus and veterans in general. Regardless of your political views, regardless of Republican, Democrat, Independent, your views on the nation's conflicts, regardless of any of that, it can be somewhat of a contentious view, but it's something that I hold very strongly to my heart, is because of veterans who are willing to sign on the dotted line and protect us and what we do in this country, that's why we're able to have institutions like West Virginia University. That's why we're able to have colleges, universities that provide affordable education. It's why we're able to do what we do. There's always going to be people throughout the world, throughout history, that seek to impose their mindset on us. And it's only because we have a strong military with young men and women of every make and model, race, religion, sexual orientation, because we have those soldiers, those heroes, that's why we can do what we do. So this quote never rings more true than it does now. The reason we're able to even have this presentation, the reason we're even able to debate the policies of our president, the only reason we're even able to think about these things today is because we have soldiers that protect our way of life and the way we do things in this country. Sorry if I get a little emotional there. So I really appreciate everyone's attention throughout this. I really hope that I was able to highlight why this is going to be important to us in the coming decade leading up to 2020 as the veterans on campus population continues to rise. I hope that I was able to communicate to you some of the common issues that I've heard of and that I've read about student veterans facing on campus. And most importantly, I hope I was able to give you some baseline knowledge, some phone numbers, websites, contact information that you are able to better support that student veteran on campus that might come to you needing some type of support of some kind. So I hope I was able to meet those goals. I really appreciate it. And as the last kind of item for your tool bag, I have my phone number, my email address on this presentation. I'd be happy to talk to you more one-on-one a little more in depth about any of these issues or any of these support networks, I'd be happy to do that with you, as well as repeating this presentation with your staff via Skype webinar or a campus visit. It'd be my honor to do so. So I really appreciate your support. And if you have any questions, you can throw them on the chat box. If not, I'm going to turn it back over to my wonderful co-organizers of this event.
Okay, thanks, Johnny. We'll just take another minute, see if there's any questions from the group or any general comments. Okay. Well, just want to say thank you to Johnny, not only for your service to the country, but for taking time to share that information with us. I definitely heard you when you said, you know, in a couple of years this is going to impact all of us. So thank you for taking the time to help us serve our student populations better. And I thought this was very, very helpful for all of us, if not now, definitely for the future. We got a thank you here. Thank you, Johnny, for the wonderful presentation. Nicely done. So thank you, Trish. Please, if you do have questions for Johnny, his email's still up there. Feel free to grab that. If you are at all interested in learning more about the webinar series that we have or getting involved, just feel free to take a minute and drop a note in the chat box there, and Gina and I will reach out. If not, thank you all so much for attending. Thank you again to Johnny for presenting. And keep an eye on your Makuho emails and on the Makuho website, because we will have another webinar coming soon. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.